It happened to be that this was very, very stuck. He couldn't remove it. And even when he took it to a sofa, he also found it difficult to remove, was unable to remove it. So he asked me whether it's okay to wear the tefillin as they are, or they have to persevere and remove that cover. So there is in the Gemara, talks about if the tefillin were coated, tzipon zohov, if the tefillin were coated with gold or with a skin of a non-kosher animal. And that would make the tefillin invalid. There's two ways of learning the pshat tzipon zohov. Does it mean that the actual box was made of gold, or does it mean that the box was made of leather like normal, but then it was covered with gold? There's two ways of learning pshat in the Gemara. And the poil, the halacha is that even the tzipon zohov with covering a layer of gold on top of it would invalidate the tefillin. The fact that the plastic is so stuck that it cannot be removed, that raises the question of tzipon zohov, of it being covered with another material, which would invalidate the tefillin. So I said that he should not use those tefillin until the plastic is removed. Meanwhile, as I'm looking into it, I'm wondering, why is it then, the minhag is, the way I was brought up, I was taught by my father, when you put on tefillin, you take off the cover of the Shel Yad, and then you make the brocha, and you put on your tefillin, and then once you're finished, then you put the cover back on. So I was trying to look a little bit more about this. So here we have a letter of the Rebbe. This is the letter, this is to, I think it's to Reborch Paris, the father of our resident of Levi Paris. So I'm reading here from the text. B'masha kosu, oidis losum tik hatfilin al shel yad al hatfilin, be'kol meshach zman hatfilah kedei lishme hapinus. The fact that you write about, is it appropriate to have a cover on the tefillin, on the hand tefillin, to protect the corners? Now I must confess that until now I did not know that there are those who object. And you take a look at the Sefer Piskei Teshuvos, and he has a whole list of poskim who object to the wearing of such a cover because of the idea of tzipon zohov. It's a cover of an extra body, and it's an obstruction. But he also brings a list of poskim who say it is okay, fine. So that's, I didn't realize such it was the chiddush. The Rebbe writes to Rabbi Reborch Paris, indeed I do so myself. Now that's the Rebbe's writing this letter referring to this corner over here, which is cut out. And that's because the Zohar is very emphatic that the yud of the tefillin, which is this part of the knot, the top part of the knot of the tefillin, should not be separated from the box of the tefillin. And therefore, even though you're wearing that cover to protect the tefillin, but the corner there is cut out so that the yud should not veer away from the box. In the Ashkenaz tefillin, I've seen sometimes actually the sofer even will sew it with a piece of sinew to hold it together. But there is this emphasis in the Zohar that you shouldn't budge away. Mat im the divrei haZohar HaKodesh, in corresponding to the words of the Zohar, it says that the yud shouldn't budge. Then, fascinating how the Rebbe describes something of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and it's interesting. Let's read the next couple of lines. But the tefillin of my father-in-law, his tefillin box. Years ago, the tefillin boxes were just the top. They weren't all the way around the bottom piece. They were just like a straight box on top.
It's better for me to wear the shel rosh. Okay, so he writes that the tefillin of the Rebbe the Shver that red box probably, which they used to have, is bishleimusu. Which from this I understand that he didn't wear the box on his tefillin throughout the davening. So probably for sure the Rebbe Rashab also did not wear the box during davening. So this is very interesting how instead of the Rebbe saying, I look at the way the Rebbe wore the tefillin and he did not wear the box, he doesn't say that. He says, I saw how his cover is. I didn't pry to see what he does under his sleeve. I just see that his box is no corners cut. So it must be that he doesn't wear it during davening. So meanwhile, here we have that the Rebbe is saying that the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab did not wear the shadel during davening. And now I've told you that there are poskim who actually take exception to doing so. But the Rebbe says himself he does wear it. I want to also share with you another interesting thing.
Why is there a hole in the top?
Just a second. I'll come to that. So what I find interesting is that there are many Eden who pull down the sleeve over the tefillin. The Rebbe did not because he wore short sleeves, but many Eden, because there's a lotion of it should be for you. So there's two ways of learning. It means it dafka has to be private, or that's allowed to be private. The Alter Rebbe says it can be private. So you're allowed to pull down the sleeve, but you don't have to. Others learn it's dafka, you should pull down the sleeve. It should be l'chol ois. Well, I remember as a child, Reb Sadia Liberov would come to London sometimes. I remember seeing how he would pull down the sleeve between putting on the Shel Yad and the Shel Rosh, when you're not meant to be mafsik. He would pull down the sleeve. And I saw now in the Sefer Ashkafta de Rebbe, that the Rebbe Rashab was also noeg like that. He pulled down the sleeve between the Shel Yad and Shel Rosh. That's how important they would see the idea of pulling down, of covering the tefillin. At any rate, but the Rebbe, as we say, we did not. The hole at the top is to be able to touch. To be able to touch the tefillin when you touch it by Peseches Yodecha or in 6 or 7 times during davening when you touch the tefillin. So that's what it's there for. Now, there's also, I remember Rabbi Telsner, who was my Malamed for a year or two, he told us that the Rebbe's Tefillin Shadel had several holes cut in the side, not just in the top. No, I did not check it personally. But that's what I heard. And I've seen others also say about doing this, that there should be kind of to diminish the amount of cover. Now, one more thing about this, this is Sheinim in Hogim. I'm back to my question. Why is it why was I taught to remove the cover of the tefillin during making the bracha, and then after you put in the Shel Rosh, then to put the cover back? So I don't have an answer, I'm going to admit. At first I thought perhaps it's out so that you should hold the tefillin when you make the bracha. Now here I've got a quote from the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, somewhere in Reish Vov, I think. Kol davar shemevorich olav leochlo yelahoriach bei. Whenever you make a bracha on an article, to eat it, or to smell it, to do a mitzvah with it, you should hold it in your right hand. And I was thinking about this, perhaps it's to hold the tefillin. But then I realized the next morning when I put on my talis and tefillin, that I was not holding my tefillin with my right hand. I'm holding the tefillin in my left hand. I've got the ritzuah stretched in my left hand, and I take my talis and I cover over my arm, and I make the bracha like that. So I'm not really touching, my right hand is not touching the tefillin altogether. And I must say, I spent a long time trying to find any poskim should address why is it we don't hold the tefillin in the right hand when we put on tefillin. Now, I'm going to say that in Minig Ashkenaz, when they kind of pull the tefillin with their ritzuah, they probably hold their ritzuah in their right hand. So they're holding at least the ritzuah in their right hand when they're making the bracha. I don't know, I've never done it myself. But in our minhag, we are holding, I think, you cover. And the reason why you put the talus over is because the upper part above the elbow is it's not such a tznius dika part. It's usually covered. So you cover it over for tznius. So then you're not holding with your right hand. So So I'm back to the question, which I don't have the answer. So that's okay. I don't know the answer, but I was taught that when you put on the tefillin, you take off the cup. And I saw in various forum, they write this. And in Piskei Teshuvos, he gives a few references, and each one of them, or some of them at least, say that at the time of the bracha, perhaps out of respect, you want to be able to see the mitzvah. I once saw a very nice thought. When we make the bracha on Leishiv Basuke, so many people mentioned in Minhagim, I believe, to look up at the schach. Is it to just check that the dach is open? Doesn't always work, because at night you can't see whether the dach is open or not. So I saw Baruch Oberlander, who's the shliach in Budapest. So he once wrote that if you can't hold the sukkah in your hand, at least you hold it with your eyes. You're eyeing it. You're some way you're connecting with it. And so possibly that's the similar idea which I saw in some forum, that you want at the time when you make the bracha that the tefillin should be more exposed. But I'm not satisfied with that. And if someone wants to share with us a better explanation, I'm happy to listen. Right. Now, right. Arya Freeman, one of our resident Sofrim, is pointing out that some maintain that which it says in the Zohar, that the kesher should touch the tefillin, it's enough if it touches the titura. Now I'm pointing onto the picture. The titura is the ridge which is around the bottom of the tefillin, and that's called the titura. And they say it's enough that it touches there. And that's obviously not our minhag. We are particular that it touches the tefillin itself. And so this has brought me from one thing to another. You mentioned this. One of my peeves is when people that Chabad wear arba al arba tefillin, which means 4 by 4 centimeters. The mocker is of wearing, it says in the Geonim that the Tefillin Shel Rosh should be etzba'ayim al etzba'ayim. It should be 2 square fingers. Square fingers doesn't sound right. If you've got square fingers, you're in trouble. I don't know how you're going to say it. Etzba'ayim al etzba'ayim. Keep to the Lashon HaKodesh. So now that works out in centimeters, 4 centimeters square. The Welt, the Chredische Welt, wear smaller tefillin because they say that the 4 centimeters or the 2 fingers is including this space, the titura. That's why the top of the tefillin is smaller. That's about 3 centimeters. Chabad take the view that the daled, the etzba'ayim has to be in the Shel Rosh alone, and therefore our Shel Rosh tends to be that much larger than the average Shel Rosh, which you'll see in a Hamish shul. And just where does it come from? It comes from the Kohen Gadol wearing tefillin, and it says in the Gemara about there was a space between the tzitz, the head plate, and his turban in mitznefes. There was space for the tefillin, and then in Gemara it looks like there was etzba'ayim. So that's where the minig of so the Chabad minig is to not look at the titura as tefillin, but to look at it as an accessory of the tefillin. And therefore the emphasis of the Zohar of the not touching the tefillin is not enough. It touches the lower ridge of the tefillin. It should actually touch the actual box where the parsha is in.